Rain pelted down on the cracked pavement as Roman Callahan adjusted his worn hoodie over his head, shielding his 5-year-old son from the worst of the downpour. The line to the community clinic stretched around the corner, and his arms ached from holding little Theo, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder. Roman shifted his weight, checking the time. They'd been waiting for over an hour, and Theo's cough was getting worse. The free pediatric care only ran until noon, and it was already past 11:30. "Daddy, my chest hurts," Theo mumbled, eyes fluttering open. "I know, buddy. We're almost there," Roman said, brushing damp curls from his son's forehead. That's when he saw her. He didn't know her name, only that she looked like she didn't belong here, drenched but composed, her black heels clicking against the wet concrete, her sleek coat plastered to her body. Her eyes scanned the line, frustration flickering behind them. Roman stepped out of the line just as she approached, gently shifting Theo to his other arm. "You can take my spot," he said without thinking, nodding toward the front. "You look like you've got somewhere important to be." The woman blinked, stunned. "Are you sure?" He gave a tired smile. "Yes, we'll be fine." She hesitated, then stepped into the spot, glancing back once more. "Thank you." By the time Roman and Theo made it inside, the clinic was full. The receptionist gave him an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, sir, we're at capacity for today." His heart dropped. "But my son, he's got a wheezing cough and a fever." The woman, he didn't even know her name, was halfway out the door when she turned sharply and came back. "He can have my appointment," she said to the receptionist. Roman stared at her. "You don't have to do that." She looked straight into his eyes. "You gave me your spot. I'm just returning the favor." He wanted to argue, but Theo coughed violently against his chest. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. She smiled softly, then walked away into the rain. He didn't expect to see her again. Madeline Foster hated being late, especially for board meetings. She arrived at her office top floor, glass walls, overlooking the skyline 10 minutes past noon, soaked and exhausted. Her assistant rushed to her with a towel and espresso. "You okay?" her assistant asked. Madeline nodded slowly, then paused. "Actually, reschedule my afternoon. There's something I need to do." 3 days later, Roman was at the hardware store, juggling a box of light bulbs and a squirming Theo when a sleek black car pulled up out front. He didn't notice at first until the door opened and high heels clicked across the concrete again. "Hey," the woman said, stopping in front of him. He blinked. "You." She smiled. "I never got your name." "Roman," he said, shifting Theo to his other arm. "This is my son, Theo." "I'm Madeline," she said, crouching slightly to wave at Theo. "Hi, Theo." Theo blinked at her, then offered a shy wave. Madeline straightened. "I wanted to check on him. Is he okay?" Roman nodded. "Yeah, turns out it was bronchitis. They gave us antibiotics." "I'm glad," she said. "Look, I know this is going to sound strange, but would you maybe have lunch with me?" Roman blinked. "Lunch?" She laughed. "I owe you one. And I'm really not used to people being that decent to me without expecting something in return." Roman hesitated. He wasn't used to women like her, polished, confident, clearly from another world. But Theo tugged on his sleeve. "Can we go, Daddy? I'm hungry." Roman sighed, then looked at her. "All right, but nothing fancy, just a burger joint or something." Madeline gave a mysterious smile. "Sure, just a burger joint." It wasn't a burger joint. It was a sleek bistro downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows and menus, with no prices. Roman raised an eyebrow as a waiter in a crisp black suit led them to a corner booth. "I said no fancy," Roman muttered. Madeline smiled. "This is my version of casual." Theo was already coloring on the kids' menu, with a fresh pack of crayons handed to him by a waiter. Roman leaned across the table. You really didn't have to do this. I know, she said, but I wanted to. The food was incredible. Theo devoured his grilled cheese, and Roman, well, he couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten something that didn't come from a microwave. So, he said, glancing at her, what do you do exactly? She sipped her wine. I run a company. He raised a brow. What kind of company? She hesitated, then said, Foster and Vale. Roman choked on his water. The tech company, the one that just bought out half the city. She nodded. He stared at her. You're the CEO of Foster and Vale. Her smile turned sheepish. Yeah. He laughed once, then shook his head. Of course you are. Does that make lunch awkward? She asked, voice softening. Roman looked at Theo, happily munching on sweet potato fries, then back at her. No, he said slowly, it just makes it a little more surreal. She grinned. Good. After lunch, she insisted on walking them to Roman's beat-up truck. Thank you, she said again as Theo climbed in. Roman nodded. You didn't have to track us down, you know. I wanted to, she said, then added, can I see you again? He stared at her. You mean like a date? Madeline shrugged, but her voice was hopeful. Yeah, like a date. Roman ran a hand through his hair. I'm not. I'm just a handyman. I barely make rent, and I've got a kid. I know, she said, and I still want to see you again. He looked at her, really looked. She wasn't just beautiful, she was genuine. No pretense, no games. He smiled. Okay, yeah, like that. Madeline stepped closer, her voice soft. Good. They stood there, the rain starting again, falling gently over the sidewalk. Roman looked at her, this woman who'd stepped into his life like a thunderstorm and somehow left it brighter. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something he hadn't dared to hope for. Possibility. Roman hadn't planned on seeing Madeline again so soon, but 2 days later, she showed up outside the community center where he was repairing a broken window frame. She stood at the bottom of the ladder, watching him work with arms folded, her tailored navy blazer catching the early afternoon sunlight. You missed a spot, she said, tilting her chin toward the loose putty near the top. He glanced down, one brow raised. You stalking me now? Madeline shrugged. I prefer the term following up. He climbed down slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. You really don't seem like the kind of woman who has time for this. I don't, she said, but I'm making time. Roman leaned against the ladder. I've got Theo with me today. He's inside drawing with the volunteers. I figured you would, Madeline said. That's why I brought lunch. And yes, this time it's sandwiches from an actual deli, no linen napkins. He laughed under his breath. You're persistent. Madeline met his gaze. I know what I want, don't you? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he led her around the back of the center where there was a weathered picnic table. She laid out the sandwiches and 2 bottles of sparkling water. He sat across from her, arms resting on the table. You always like this? He asked. I like what? Direct, like nothing rattles you. Madeline unwrapped her sandwich. I've been running boardrooms since I was 25. I had to grow a backbone fast. He took a bite of his food. And here you are, chasing down a guy who drives a truck that barely runs. She smiled. You think I care about that? I think most people in your world do. Madeline's eyes narrowed slightly. Well, I'm not most people. They ate in silence for a few moments. The sounds of children laughing drifted from inside the center. Roman spoke first. Theo's mom left when he was 2, said she couldn't do the mom thing. I haven't heard from her since. Madeline didn't flinch. You raise him on your own. He nodded. And take on whatever jobs I can get. Carpentry, fixing things. It's not glamorous, but it keeps the lights on. I think that's the most impressive thing I've heard all week, she said. He didn't look at her, but something in his shoulders eased. You don't have to pretend to understand my life. I'm not pretending, Madeline said. I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment over a laundromat. My dad worked nights. My mom cleaned houses. I didn't come from money, Roman. Earned every cent. He looked at her surprised. You. I built Foster and Vale out of my college dorm room. Coded the first prototype myself with a roommate snoring next to me. Roman gave a low whistle. So you're not just the face of a company. I'm the bones of it, she said, and I have the scars to prove it. He leaned back, watching her in a new light. All right, I'm listening. Madeline reached into her bag and pulled out a folded flyer. Theo's school fundraiser is next week. I saw the notice on the board inside. They're trying to raise enough for new classroom heaters. I know, Roman said, but it's been slow. Most of the parents are just trying to make ends meet. I want to help, she said, handing him the flyer. He didn't take it. You don't have to do that. I know I don't, she said, but I want to. Roman hesitated. You're not doing this to impress me, are you? No, she said. I'm doing it because no kid should have to wear gloves in class just to hold a pencil. This time he did take the flyer. All right, but don't expect a thank you banquet. Madeline grinned. Noted. As they packed up the lunch wrappers, the door to the center opened, and Theo came bounding out with a crayon-streaked paper in hand. Daddy, look, he shouted. I drew us with a big house and a dog. Roman crouched to take the picture. That's amazing, kiddo. Madeline knelt beside them. Can I be in the house too? Theo nodded seriously. You can have the room with the balcony. Roman met her eyes. Guess you're moving in. She laughed, but her voice softened. Only if the rent's reasonable. Roman stood, lifting Theo onto his hip. We should get going. I've got work across town. Madeline nodded. I'll walk you to the truck. As they reached the parking lot, she stopped beside the passenger door. I'm throwing a fundraising gala next Friday, she said. Black tie, silent auction, the kind of thing you probably hate. Sounds like torture, Roman said. She smiled. I want you to come. He raised an eyebrow. You want me, in my one decent shirt, at your swanky event. I want you because you're the only person there who will call me out if I start talking in circles. He shook his head. You're serious. Completely, she said. I'll send a car. Roman opened the door, setting Theo inside. Fine, but I'm bringing backup. Deal, she said. As he drove off, she watched the truck disappear down the street. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, but she ignored it. For the first time in weeks, her mind wasn't on quarterly earnings or boardroom votes. It was on a man with calloused hands, a quiet strength, and a little boy who dreamed of balconies. And she wasn't sure what scared her more, how much she wanted to see him again, or how easy it was becoming to imagine herself in that picture too. The gala was held at the Langford Estate, an ivy-covered mansion turned event venue nestled in the hills above the city. Floodlights lit up the driveway, casting a golden glow over a procession of black cars and sharply dressed guests. A string quartet played near the entrance as servers moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. Roman stepped out of the town car Madeline had sent, adjusting the borrowed tux that tugged slightly at his shoulders. Theo's small hand was firmly in his suit jacket a little too big, his tie crooked. Roman had insisted on bringing him, he didn't have anyone to leave him with, and Madeline hadn't argued. Theo stared at the towering mansion with wide eyes. Is this a castle? Roman glanced at the building. Feels like one. Then, out of the crowd, Madeline appeared. She was in a midnight blue gown, her hair swept up, diamond earrings catching the light with every step she took. The sight of her made Roman's breath catch not because she looked beautiful, but because she looked unreachable. Until she smiled. "You made it," she said, her voice warm as she bent to Theo's level. "And you look like a prince." Theo beamed. "I wore my best shoes." Madeline stood, her eyes meeting Roman's. "You clean up well." "This thing's too tight," he muttered, tugging at the collar. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing the knot of his tie. "There, fixed." He cleared his throat. "So, what exactly are we doing here?" Madeline straightened. "There's a silent auction, a few speeches. I'm hoping to raise enough to fund the entire heater upgrade not just for the school, but the other centers in the district." Roman blinked. "That's a lot." "I have friends with deep pockets," she said simply. "And if I'm going to twist arms tonight, I'd like you nearby." "Why?" "Because when I look at you, I remember why I started all this." Theo tugged his hand. "Can we look inside?" Madeline offered her arm. "Shall we?" They entered together, the massive foyer buzzing with chatter and clinking glasses. Roman tried not to stare at the chandeliers or the modern art installations on the walls. Theo was awestruck, craning his neck at everything. "This place smells like flowers and money," he whispered. Madeline laughed. "That's accurate." As the evening went on, Roman watched her work the room. She was confident without being condescending, firm but not cold. When she spoke, people leaned in. When she laughed, they smiled. It was clear she wasn't just respected, she was admired. And yet, every few minutes, her eyes would find his across the room. At one point, a man in a velvet blazer leaned in too close, whispering in Madeline's ear. Roman didn't mean to react, but his jaw tightened anyway. Later, she found him near the dessert table. "Jealous?" she asked, plucking a strawberry from a tray. "He looked like a guy who's used to getting what he wants," Roman said. "I'm not what he wants," she said, "and even if I were, I'm not interested." Roman folded his arms. "I just don't get it." "You get what?" "Why me?" Madeline tilted her head. "Is it so hard to believe I'm attracted to a man who's kind, honest, and doesn't care about my bank account?" He looked away. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is," she said. "You're scared." He met her eyes. "Of what?" "Of being seen," she said. "Of being wanted for exactly who you are." Roman didn't answer. Instead, he looked across the room to where Theo was sitting with a volunteer, happily spooning ice cream into his mouth. "Everything I do is for him," Roman said. "Can't afford to gamble with someone who might disappear." Madeline's expression softened. "I'm not going anywhere." "You say that now." "I say that because I mean it," she said. "But you're right. You have every right to protect your son. I just hope, when you're ready, you'll stop assuming I'm like everyone else who walked away." Before he could reply, a host stepped up to the microphone at the front of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? Our final item of the evening is something special." A hush fell over the crowd. "It's not listed in your program. Tonight, we're auctioning a private dinner prepared by Michelin-starred chef Luca Vierli. The dinner will be held at the winner's home, with the proceeds going directly to the heater fund for our local schools." Madeline leaned toward Roman. That was a last-minute addition. The bidding started fast: 10,000, then 15, then 20. Roman watched the numbers climb, feeling more and more out of place. These were people who spent more on a dinner than he made in a month. Then Madeline raised her hand. 50,000, she said, her voice clear. The room gasped, the auctioneer blinked. "We have 50,000, any other bids?" A silence. Going once, going twice. Sold. Applause erupted. Roman stared at her. You just spent 50 grand on dinner. I spent 50 grand on new heaters, she said. The dinner's just a bonus. He shook his head, speechless. Later, as the crowd thinned and the music softened, Madeline found him on the balcony, leaning on the railing. I know you're not used to this, she said quietly. He didn't look at her. It's not just that. Then what is it? Roman exhaled. You're light years ahead of me, Maddie. You walk into a room and people listen. I walk into a room and people ask if I'm there to fix the plumbing. She stepped beside him. You care about any of that? I think you're going to wake up one day and realize I'm not enough. Madeline turned to face him. Roman, I've had everything money can buy, and none of it has ever made me feel the way you do when you look at me. He finally met her eyes. I came here tonight to raise money, she said, but I stayed because I want to be with you. Roman didn't speak for a long time. Then he reached out and took her hand. I still don't know how this is going to work, he said. We'll figure it out, she whispered. Behind them, Theo ran out onto the balcony, holding a cookie bigger than his hand. Daddy, she said, I can take home dessert. Roman looked at Madeline. You bribed him. She grinned. No, I won him over. He laughed, then leaned down to lift Theo into his arms. As Madeline slipped her hand back into his, Roman realized something had changed. He wasn't standing on the outside anymore. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to. Roman paced the hallway outside Theo's classroom, his work boots scuffing softly against the polished linoleum. The parent-teacher conference was running late, and the building smelled faintly of overwaxed floors and dry erase markers. He kept glancing at the double doors, knowing Madeline was already inside. She'd insisted on coming with him. Not because she thought he couldn't handle it, but because she wanted to know Theo as more than a cheerful face at lunch tables and gala balconies. She wanted to be part of his world, not just his weekends. The door opened, and a young teacher with a cardigan buttoned to her throat gave him a quick nod. Mr. Callahan, you can come in now. He stepped inside, glancing at Madeline, who was seated beside the teacher's desk, hands folded neatly in her lap. She looked completely at ease, as though she'd spent her entire life inside school buildings that didn't have working air conditioning. Hi, he said, sitting beside her. Madeline leaned slightly toward him. Theo's got a lot of fans here. The teacher smiled. He's one of the kindest kids I've ever had in class. Thoughtful, creative, and very protective of the smaller students. Roman let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. But, the teacher continued gently, he's been struggling a bit with reading. Not comprehension, he understands everything, but he's been hesitant to read aloud. Says he doesn't want to be wrong in front of the others. Madeline turned to Roman. He said something similar last week. When we were reading together, he kept checking my face after every sentence. Roman rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't know it was bothering him that much. The teacher offered a reassuring smile. He's not behind, he just needs a little confidence boost. Someone on one time could help. Roman nodded. We'll make it happen. Afterwards, they walked out into the schoolyard, Theo running ahead of them with his backpack bouncing against his small frame. Madeline glanced sideways. He's more like you than you think. Roman's gaze tracked Theo's path toward the chain-link fence where he'd stopped to examine a row of ants. He's better than me, he said. He's soft where I've had to be hard. Madeline slowed her pace. You've done everything right by him. Roman didn't respond. He stared out at the playground, voice quiet. When his mom left, I told myself I'd never let anyone else get close enough to leave that kind of hole again. Madeline rested her hand on his arm. I'm not leaving. You say that like it's a promise, he said. It is. He turned to her, eyes searching hers. Maddie, I don't know how to do this. Be with someone like you. I'm not built for penthouses and press releases. She took his hand. I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking you to let me in. He studied her face open, steady, unflinching. Why me? A breeze lifted her hair as she answered. Because when everything else in my world is about control, you're the one thing I didn't see coming, and the one thing I don't want to live without. Roman swallowed hard. This scares the hell out of me. I know, she said. It scares me too. A week later, the heaters were installed at the school. Not with fanfare or plaques, but with quiet coordination and a check that Madeline never mentioned again. Roman tried to thank her. She stopped him with a look. I didn't do it for gratitude, she said. I did it because I could, and because Theo deserves to be warm while he learns to read. That same day, Roman found himself standing in front of a 2-story building with peeling paint and a crooked mailbox. Madeline had driven him there, refusing to explain what they were doing. When she handed him the keys, he blinked. What is this? A workshop, she said, and a small office upstairs. You've been fixing everyone else's problems for years. Figured it was time someone built something just for you. Roman stared at the keys in his palm. Can't accept this. It's not a gift, she said. It's an investment in your business, in your future. He looked at her, overwhelmed. I don't even know where to start. She smiled. Start by naming it. He thought for a moment, then said, Theo and Co. Madeline's eyes softened. Perfect. The grand gesture came quietly, a month later. It wasn't on a yacht or in front of flashing cameras. It happened on a rooftop that Roman had repaired himself, overlooking the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting everything in amber light. Madeline arrived to find the rooftop transformed. String lights stretched between wooden beams, and a table sat in the center, covered with a simple white cloth. Roman stood beside it, adjusting his collar. Theo was already seated, kicking his feet from a bench. This is beautiful, Madeline said, her heels clicking on the wooden planks. Roman looked nervous for the first time in weeks. I wanted to do something that felt like me, not suits and speeches, just this. She stepped closer. It's the most thoughtful thing anyone's ever done for me. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a ring box. She froze. I don't have speeches either, he said. I don't have a yacht or a castle or any of the things people probably expect you to want. He opened the box. Inside was a ring simple, elegant, with a band of brushed gold and a single sapphire. But what I do have, he continued, voice steady now, is a heart that hasn't stopped choosing you since the day you gave up your clinic appointment. I have a son who draws you into every picture of our future, and I have a life that's better with you in it. Madeline's eyes filled. Roman. I want to marry you, he said, not because I think I should, but because can't imagine a single day without you in it. Theo leaned over the table. Say yes, Maddie, he practiced a lot. Madeline laughed through her tears, then dropped to her knees in front of Theo and kissed his forehead. Then she stood, looked Roman directly in the eyes and said, yes. The city buzzed below them, unaware that something perfect had just unfolded above its skyline. Weeks turned into months. The workshop opened, and clients came by word of mouth. Theo's reading improved. Madeline adjusted to dinners that didn't involve reservations and began to crave the quiet rhythms of a life built on something real. They were married in the spring beside a lake, with Theo holding the rings and throwing flower petals. Roman wore a suit that actually fit. Madeline walked barefoot down the makeshift aisle, her hand in his by the time the vows began. He promised her a life of honesty. She promised him a life of joy. And when they kissed beneath a canopy of wildflowers, It wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of everything they'd never dared to ask for. Together, the scent of fresh sawdust drifted through the open doors of the workshop as Roman carved the finishing touches into a custom headboard. Dust clung to the scruff on his jaw, and the sleeves rolled past his elbows, but he barely noticed. Music played quietly from an old speaker in the corner Theo's favorite playlist, a mix of gentle acoustic songs and random dinosaur soundtracks. A tiny socked foot kicked the back of his stool. "You spelled my name right this time," Theo said, inspecting the carved letters at the base. Roman turned to him with a grin. "Always spell your name right. You forgot the E last time." That was a practice board. Theo looked unconvinced but dropped it, hopping onto the nearby bench with a juice box. "Is Maddie coming?" "She'll be here any minute." Right on cue, the door creaked open and Madeline appeared, holding a paper bag and a stack of envelopes. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wore jeans and a faded green t-shirt from the school fundraiser, paint still splattered on the hem. Roman wiped his hands on a rag and walked over to her. "You look like you lost a battle with an art project." "I did. Second graders have no mercy." Theo ran to her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Did you bring the surprise?" Madeline handed him the bag. "Lunch first, then surprise." Theo scurried off to a corner with his sandwich, already halfway into it before he'd even sat down. Roman leaned in. "You're late." She pulled a letter from the stack and handed it to him. "I was at City Hall." He opened the envelope and scanned the contents, eyebrows lifting. They approved it. Madeline nodded. The grant application for the community renovation project passed. Full funding, which means your benches are about to be in every park from here to the river. Roman stared at the letter, stunned. "I thought we were still waiting for the committee to review it." They were, until I showed up with Theo's crayon drawing of the new playground and told them the design team was already working overtime. He laughed and pulled her closer. "You're dangerous with crayons." She kissed his cheek. "You have no idea." They sat down together while Theo built a tower from empty toolboxes. Roman opened another envelope and held it out to Madeline. "You first." She glanced at the return address and paused. "This is from the university." He nodded. "Your nomination went through. You're getting the Community Leadership Award next month." Madeline stared at the paper, then at him. "You submitted it. You've done more for this city than anyone they've ever honored. You just never ask for credit." She blinked twice and tucked the envelope under her arm. "You're getting really good at blindsiding me." "I take lessons from someone who once bought me a building on a Tuesday." They spent the rest of the afternoon painting Theo's reading nook upstairs with glow in the dark stars. Roman balanced on a ladder while Madeline outlined constellations from memory, and Theo narrated his own bedtime story about a raccoon who opened a bakery. As the sun dipped lower, they drove home together. Theo napped in the back seat, cradling a plush astronaut under his arm. Madeline turned toward Roman. "I got a call from my board this morning." "Everything okay?" "They offered me a position in London, global expansion, 6 months abroad." Roman glanced at her. "Are you thinking about it?" "I turned it down." He slowed the car slightly. "You did?" "I thought about what I'd be leaving behind, and there's nothing on another continent I want more than what I have right here." He reached across the console, lacing his fingers with hers. "You sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Spring melted into summer, and the days blurred in the way happy ones always do. Roman's workshop expanded, taking on apprentices from the local trade school. Madeline launched a mentorship initiative for women in tech, quietly funding scholarships without attaching her name. Theo graduated to chapter books and started building a treehouse with Roman on the weekends. One evening, after dinner on the patio, Roman brought out a small velvet box. Madeline eyed him suspiciously. What now? He opened it to reveal a delicate gold necklace with a charm shaped like a house. You gave me a future. Figured I'd give you a piece of home to wear when you're out saving the world. She fastened it around her neck, eyes shining. It's perfect. Theo ran through the yard with a paper kite, shouting triumphantly when it caught the wind. Roman wrapped an arm around Madeline's waist. He's going to remember this, all of it. So will we. That night, after tucking Theo in with his favorite space book, they lay under the sheets with the windows open, letting the breeze carry in the soft rustle of leaves. Madeline rested her head on Roman's chest, tracing idle patterns on his arm. He said, I used to think love was something you survived. Now I know it's something you build. She whispered, with nails and stars and a little boy who believes in raccoons that bake. And a woman who never once asked me to be anything but who I am. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in the kind of peace that doesn't need words. Years passed. The treehouse became a second home for Theo and his friends. Madeline's programs reached cities beyond their own, though she never left the one where she'd found the only thing she'd been missing. Roman's work spread from parks to schools to homes that whispered stories through the grains in their wood. And every Friday night, rain or shine, they had dinner on the rooftop where he'd first proposed, under the same string lights he refused to take down, no matter how many seasons passed. Love didn't make their life perfect, but it made it theirs. And that was everything.